5 gotchas in Ruby. Almost every programming language will have various idiosyncrasies, but I find these 5 to be really painful in the Ruby programming language. By the way, if you do want to learn Ruby, I found the Codecademy course to be pretty good. 1, in general, at a high level, Ruby is a very magical language. There will be lots of implicit logic where the language is doing things for you, but you need to be aware of those things. It's not clearly called out or spelled out in the code. I consider this to be like the anti-React, where React is very declarative and explicit. 2, a specific example of this would be implicit returns. So you can leave the return keyword out of a function and it will implicitly return the last line. 3, violation of cross-language norms. So implicit return is an example of this. In other languages, this would be expected to be a void function, but there's many other examples. For example, in a Ruby class, we don't have a constructor function. Our constructor is called initialize. 4, I don't like blocks in Ruby for a few reasons. The first relates to cross-language norms. In Ruby, you can have a pipe argument syntax in the body of your function, where this is typically considered to be part of the signature of the function and it should go outside of your block body. The block body itself is defined inconsistently using the do and end keywords as well as braces. I've been told you can like swap these out, they're synonymous, but that's actually not true. Sometimes you'll get an error if you do it one way rather than the other. So this is annoying. In other languages, there's just one way to do it and it's typically braces. The other thing I don't like about blocks in Ruby is how you store them and reuse them. So you can save a block as a proc, a stored procedure, or a lambda, and then you can also just define a function. In other languages, you can have just a function call a function. That's pretty common. In Ruby, you also have a yielding model where a function will call a block. And I think this pattern is like really strange. Problem number 5 is the basically community accepted use of duck typing, which is actually just an unsafe pattern. So instead of checking whether a function takes the expected inputs, returns the expected outputs, it's very common to see if a class or object will respond to a particular property call. Speaking of property calls, parentheses are often exempted so that property interrogation, attribute interrogation, and function invocation look the same. You can't actually tell what you're doing unless you like dive into the definition, which is inconvenient. A lot of that will be overcome in Ruby 3 with the use of the language level type system, but this is like new and a lot of code bases aren't using it. Bonus is problem number 6, and that is Rails. So Rails is hyper dominant in Ruby's. You cannot name a second framework that has any significant developer mindshare. And I think this is a problem for competition and for innovation. Plus, Rails does some funky stuff. Specifically, I'm not crazy about active record, and I've had cases where my logger logs errors out of a class, but the class name is transposed from like title case into snake case. So I have to it's another piece of magic that I just have to know to look up where the error is coming from.